Hello, I'm Wes. I am a Library Development Officer for Southwark Libraries at Canada Water Library, and I am also an Elder Bard of Glastonbury, and I have the honour of facilitating Canada Water Library's regular writing group, Crucial Words. I've submitted 3 older poems and 1 relatively new one to this digital festival of words, and the older ones are titled Leopard, Catwoman and Would Have. The rather more recent one is Snowdrop, and the older ones were recorded and filmed by my friend Jamie Worsfold, which is why they are of much better quality than these ones recorded in my own home, but these are more up to date. So, I wanted to say a few words about those poems in hope it might be of interest to people following along and the ideas behind them. Probably the most significant in some ways is Catwoman. That was inspired actually by a dream. I had a really curious dream in which I felt that I was in the presence of the ancient Egyptian goddess Bastet, who is referenced in the first line of that poem. And I woke from that. I actually woke from it with the sensation of there being a cat on my bed, and there was none. And I really felt that I wanted to write something to honour this cat goddess. It was a really strong image, and I had particularly the idea that the images that we usually see that are left to us from the ancient Egyptians of Bastet are very still and really not at all like we think of cats usually. Cats are very lithe and agile creatures. I've got a little bast statuette that was given to me as a gift by my wife because she knew about this poem. So this kind of statuette is referenced in my poem, sat on her haunches, but yeah, she's very still. So really with Catwoman the idea was thinking about Bastet in that more agile role, and has she actually become the famous Batman character who is this kind of backflipping, amazing, active creature? That poem actually won me a prize, won me a cash prize in the Wells Festival of Literature a few years back, and ever since then I've felt that I've owed something of a debt to Bastet, to the goddess. So I'm a rare acolyte to some degree of the ancient Egyptian goddess, hence the statuette. The next one I'd like to talk about, Leopard, that was very much a stream of consciousness poem, and I sometimes think of it as one of my more truly surrealist poems, in the sense that it seemed to flow as imagery from within my mind. So I don't think it might be possible. I do think it might be possible for people to divine some conscious meaning in that poem, in Leopard, but there isn't really a conscious intent. If there's any intention to it, it was a subconscious one. So I was letting my mind just guide me, following the images that were coming up, writing it almost as a daydream, and I felt really happy with how that came out, but almost as if I wasn't totally responsible for it, that the inspiration for that poem had flowed through me. And as a bard, we think of that kind of flowing inspiration. There's a name for it in bardic language, which is arwen. Comes from the Welsh word for for spirit or for breath. So that is an example of how, when you're writing, sometimes you don't want to let your conscious thoughts get in the way too much, and just allow your subconscious mind to guide you. You can get good results from that. Like I say, I'm quite happy with that poem. I've had some good feedback from audiences about that one. Then one that really was a bit more thought through, in terms of me really thinking about what I wanted to get on the page, that is a poem that is directed to and committed to my wife, because we went through a long period when we were separated in different countries, separated geographically, but still very close emotionally. And one of the things that we have always bonded over is poetry and literature. And I was thinking about it as a means of being connected with other people when you're far apart from them, or don't have to be far apart in current circumstances, but we're just quite isolated from one another at the moment, of course. But we can connect over poetry and through words and literature. So in Would Have, I'm articulating that idea, imagining it as a physical space, imagining being able to go in among the words, and how would that be? And I really feel like that poem comes into its own again when it becomes a bit less conscious, and those images right at the end about sensually experiencing this world of poetry, that's what Would Have is all about. And I said that it is dedicated to my wife, but it's also really beyond that, about connecting with and sharing an experience with everyone who's interested in literature. So it's a kind of love letter to poetry in itself, Would Have. The newest one, Snowdrop, which I've just recorded today, that was written for the Shepton Mallet Snowdrop Festival. They have a competition every single year dedicated particularly to snowdrops, the flower. And I was very interested to find out, I've always been interested in fairy tales, and Snowdrop was the name of the famous character Snow White in the earliest English translation. So I used that to concentrate a poem on that character. Alongside that, I had an interest, particularly at the time when I was writing it. I was researching the imagery of apples in world mythology, and I had a particular, it was gnawing at me, this thing that in many myths from around the world throughout time, you see a character seeking out or being gifted a magical apple just before they go into an other world or the underworld, and especially if they need to get back from that place or they're expected to return. There's a fantastic line in Virgil's Aeneid where Aeneas is being told how he can secure his passage to and from the underworld. And he's told getting to the underworld is easy, anyone can do it. The line is, the door stands open night and day. And what that's really saying is anyone can get to the underworld, because to get to the underworld, the easiest way to do it is to die. And we all die, so we can all get there, but the hard part is getting back. And the key to his getting back is to find this magical branch. It's a golden or silver branch, and this is a common theme, to have golden apples on silver branches and so on. But the relevance here is that in the Snowdrop or Snow White story, she too is given a magical apple, an apple that is partly poisoned, but that is given to her with malicious intent. And I was trying to marry these things up and thinking, here we have this famous example of the central characters being given a magical apple at a key point in the story. But she doesn't go to the underworld and come back, does she? And I thought, yeah, she does. She does. She gets, in the story, she gets this apple stuck in her throat. She's laid in a glass coffin. And she's thought to be dead. But she does come back from it. And that's the really key thing. It's about coming back from death. So the Snowdrop poem is just trying to fill in that blank. Where did she go? What happens to her in the bit we don't see? And I'm imagining her having her own journey into a kind of underworld, going below like a bulb, and then finally coming back and getting to see where Snowdrop's spirit or where her mind was in that time when she's in this kind of stasis until she's freed. The artificial death is revealed, and she's really still alive, and she cheats death too. So those are my poems. I hope you enjoyed them. I hope you enjoyed hearing a bit about them. And I hope you enjoy the rest of the Festival of Words. Very glad to be a part of it, and hope to see you again in person next year.